It's been over 4 years since it all happened. Back then, I was 37. Name's Chuck. My wife, Chrissy, was 36, and we'd been together for 16 years, married for 13. We had a comfortable upper-middle-class life and a 15-year-old daughter, Cora. I also had two best friends from college, Eric and Mike. Eric was 35, his wife, Emily, was 31, and Mike, also 35, had just gone through a divorce that spring. Through us, Chrissy and Emily had become best friends as well. As a group of three couples, we had been taking a week-long vacation every summer for a few years at this point. Everything was booked and ready when I broke my ankle 3 days before our flight date. I decided to not go on the trip, as 1, I was to be non-weight-bearing for 16 weeks, 2, my meds made me extremely tired and sleepy, and 3, I just didn't want to be a burden to everyone else's fun. My wife offered to stay home with me, but I convinced her to not worry and go on the trip. When Chrissy returned from the trip, she seemed like a whole new person. She had been having a tough work year, and the stress was high. I knew she needed a real break, and was really glad she got it. On top of that, she was very affectionate and attentive upon return, almost to the point you'd call it love bombing. I was not complaining. Our sex life seemed like we were in our early 20s. I chalked it up to guilt over leaving me behind and just the overall rest from the trip itself. Fast forward to a couple weeks after Thanksgiving. All had been going well. Chrissy and Emily had planned a girls' shopping weekend a couple hours away, with a hotel stay on Saturday night. Now, here's where the situation goes to shit. We are all on Snapchat. Eric and Emily have a couple of nieces and started using it because it's the only way they can get them to message them back. I found that out myself when Cora got her first iPhone. Send a text. May as well be sending a smoke signal. Send a snap. Immediate response. We had group chats and would all send each other nonsense often enough. That night, after sending my wife a snap of the dog, I flipped to the map thing. There were the Bitmojis of Chrissy and Emily and Mike. I zoomed way in, and it appeared they were all at the same place. This didn't make any sense. Why would Mike be in a town 2.5 hours away, staying at the same hotel as Chrissy and Emily? My mind went immediately to the worst-case scenario. I tried calling Chrissy at that point, but got no answer. I called again, then again. After the fourth call, I grabbed my keys and was about to start driving that way. Then I remembered I had a 15-year-old at home and couldn't just take off at 8:30 at night to a town 2.5 hours away. I relaxed for a moment and began to think. Eric's wife was also there. Maybe he knows something. I called Eric and he picked up. I told him about the snap map. It was weird though because he didn't seem surprised or concerned, which momentarily relaxed me. Maybe I just missed something. That's when Eric verified my worst nightmares. He said he knows they are all there. Emily and Mike finally convinced Chrissy to have another threesome with them. Another? WTF. I felt the room spin at that moment. My heart sank into my feet. I snapped to after a few moments and told Eric, "You better fucking tell me everything right now." Eric, sounding defeated, said, "I will." It started with the vacation back in July. The trip was basically 5 days, after you subtract the travel days on the front and end of the trip. The first day was largely just a chill day around the pool at the Airbnb. It was day 2 when things started to happen. I knew a full outing had been planned that day. Without their spouses, Mike and Chrissy kind of naturally paired off, seeing as they were with a married couple. It all seemed innocent enough and just friendly. However, Eric noted they seemed to get more comfortable with each other as the day went on. That night was a pretty heavy drinking night with dinner back at the B&B. The drinking continued through dinner and after. Emily noticed how much flirtier and closer Chrissy and Mike were getting. After a while, Eric and Emily went to their room and left Mike and Chrissy alone. After about an hour, Emily decided to quietly venture out to see what became of them. She went by Chrissy's room only to find she wasn't there. She then crept up to Mike's room to hear the clear, distinct sounds of sex between two drunk people trying to keep it down. Emily came back to the room and told Eric what was going on. I interrupted him at this point and said, "How could she just let this happen? You said she noticed them getting like this during dinner. Why didn't she pull Chrissy aside and intervene?" Eric then coldly said, because we didn't want to. Apparently, Eric and Emily have been mulling over an open relationship. They had agreed if something happened on the trip, they would just let it happen. Eric admitted to me that he has always had a thing for my wife and thought this might be his opportunity, and it was. That was a kick in the teeth. I already had it verified that one close friend had betrayed me with my wife, and now here it was the other did too. I cussed him out, and he just took it, trying to apologize, i.e., trying to make excuses. I told him to shove that up his ass and just finish the story. The next morning, Emily went and talked to Chrissy about it. Chrissy had the expected guilt and extreme worry about being found out, especially since there were witnesses. She said it was a huge mistake, but also that it was really, really good, especially for drunk sex. Emily said, "Why stop? He just got divorced. You have been on edge because of work for a year now. We're on vacation and nothing came with you. Not your job, not Chuck, not Cora. You left your whole life behind. Consider it a free week. Eric and I won't say a thing, and we'll cover if anything comes up." Chrissy liked the sound of it but had apprehension. She went to talk to Mike. And then Mike came to Eric asking if they were for real about letting this happen. Eric said yes, just enjoy the week. In reality, he had his own scheme to sleep with my wife as well. Eric said over the next 3 days they stuck to all the plans for the trip. I know this to be true because all the expected IG and Facebook posts went up. I kept getting included in the group snap from everyone, and Chrissy would call twice a day to check in, with intermittent texts throughout the day. I suspected absolutely nothing while back home recovering. Over those last 3 days, Mike and Chrissy basically acted like a newly dating couple. They made sure on outings that any pics/posts/snaps were innocent. Otherwise, they held nothing back in terms of touching or kissing while out. And whenever they got back to the B&B, it was almost always immediately to Mike's bed. They were not quiet about it. It was very evident what they were doing and for how long. Eric, wanting his chance with Chrissy, pressured Emily into proposing a swap on the final night. He isn't totally sure what was said, but knows she, and all other parties, agreed. I interjected and said, "I don't need the details." Eric responded, "You do actually, because it has to do with where she is now." On the final night, they swapped. Eric got to have Chrissy, however. He told me he was overly excited, and it did not last very long at all. That's when she just got up, went back down the hall, and joined the other two. Eric's pride was majorly hurt as he could hear them down the hall for what seemed like forever. In fact, Emily never returned to their bed that night. This was the first time he felt regret about initiating an open marriage with his wife. The next day, they traveled back, all swearing to take it to their grave. Eric went on to say, as soon as they got back from vacation, Emily, who had first been apprehensive, was dead set on the open relationship now. He still thought it would benefit him, even though he had grown some doubts. They landed on some ground rules. He wanted to have a list of people who were no-go, and she said, no. This was about being open sexually, and they couldn't do that if people were off limits. It was going to be the same for both of them, so he should be fine with it. If he wanted to try and fuck her sister, he could, and she didn't want coworkers, exes, anyone off her list either. He agreed on the stipulation he knows everything and has access to everything. Neither of them liked the other's demands, but ended up agreeing to them. He told me they each made videos with the other stating they were agreeing to this arrangement, so the other couldn't use it against them if they ever divorced. I was sitting there thinking, this guy is a total fucking idiot. Eric then let me know how awful this whole situation has gone, telling me Emily has been highly active while he is yet to manage a single date. As the months have crept on, it's only put a greater void between the two of them, and he said he already has divorce papers drawn up. At that point, he offered up all evidence he had. I accepted. Shortly after, there was a whole folder in my inbox. The vast majority of stuff was his wife with other men. Co-workers, randoms, she had been busy. But there were plenty of messages between Chrissy and Emily. I picked up that Emily and Mike had started a regular affair about 4 months earlier. About 1 month ago, the conversation of the threesome started. That whole time after the vacation, Chrissy had been really good to me and seemed much happier than before. In the beginning of the convo, she stuck to the idea that what happened on vacation was it. It was vacation from reality, and now it was over and life would just go on like normal. About 2 weeks ago, she started to show some interest at Emily's encouragement for a repeat of that final vacation day. This is when Mike entered the conversation too. Chrissy agrees at this point, and the plan comes to be. In addition, Eric had photos of Chrissy and Mike kissing, and a recording of him having sex with her. The son of a bitch had sneakily recorded it. Not the best quality vid, but he did manage to get a clear shot of her face and tattoo. I thanked him for the evidence. He tried to apologize again. Then I told him he was piece of shit, and he better never contact me again. With the whole betrayal now out in the open, it was time to turn my attention back to my wife. And all the time I was talking to Eric, I still had not gotten a call back from Chrissy. I called 2 more times and then just said fuck it and sent her a pic of her and Mike kissing. The return call was immediate. I didn't answer. She kept calling and I kept ignoring. Eventually, she switched to text. The first text was as cliché as it gets. I can explain. I sent back, "Don't bother. I already got the whole story from Eric. Tell your trashy little friend he has divorce papers for her. Just like you will come Monday." At that point, I blocked her number. Chrissy came into the house frantically at about 1:30 a.m. She immediately broke down in tears and tried to hug me. I blocked the advance and she began apologizing profusely and begging for forgiveness. I told her to save it. We had a lot to talk about. I wanted every question answered 100% honestly. If I thought she was lying, I would end the conversation and file for divorce on Monday. I had tons of evidence and was not afraid to show the world who she is. I then asked her, "What do you want?" She said she wanted to show me how sorry she was. She wanted to work for forgiveness and for us to work past this. I told her I didn't think that was possible, but would let her explain herself. I asked why she cheated in the first place. She said she had a lot of fun that day, was feeling good and relaxed. She hadn't felt that way in a long time. Work had been so stressful for so long. She let the moment, the drinks, take over and just went with it. She tried telling me how terrible she felt after, but I cut her off. I said, "Okay, not condoning, not forgiving, but that only explains the drunk sex you had the first time. It doesn't explain the rest of the week. You weren't drunk when you were fucking him 3 to 4 times a day the rest of the trip. Probably weren't too drunk when you fucked Eric then went and had sandwich sex after." She looked at me with tears and said, "When in Rome." I replied, "Are you fucking kidding me? That's it." She started again. "Well, let's be real. What's the difference between 1 time and a 100? You'd still react this way. Once I had already fucked up. Was there really any difference in stopping or not? Would you feel different?" I was in a fantasy land and just embraced it while I was there. I never intended for you to find out, and I never intended to do this again. I wish I could take it all back. I was despondent. "That's the most terrible thing I've ever heard," she just said. "You asked me to be honest." I asked if she was unhappy, if she was tired of me, if I didn't do it for her anymore. She said, "No, I love you. I'm happy," all the usually crap. That we have a good marriage. She just wanted to feel wild, feel excited. We had gotten somewhat monotonous, and this experience was exhilarating. Her plan had been to have this much sex with me, but when I didn't go, she at first thought, well, that's out. But once it was available, she let herself get taken by the moment. I asked about the swapping. She said that was a huge mistake. Emily had talked to her about that on the last full day, and about how they were trying an open. Emily said it's perfect because she isn't even giving up Chuck, just Mike. She admitted to being curious about Eric. Mostly though she kind of felt obligated. If they were going to cover, this was kind of payback, and a way for them to have something riding on the secret as well. I asked about this weekend. Asked why she agreed to that if she was so sorry about betraying me the first time. Chrissy said she never intended to step out of line again, and swore she was going to make the most of our relationship going forward. I now think about the months following the vacation and retch. She had been talking with Emily like usual, and Emily just seemed like she was having the time of her life now that she was open. Chrissy admitted to being a little jealous. Emily had been with several men and Chrissy was living a bit vicariously through her. When Emily started the affair with Mike, she knew what she was missing out on and became more jealous. For the record, I know Mike had a rep in college for being a ladies' man, and if I'm being honest, was the best looking of the three of us. He had managed to stay the most fit as he aged, and that had only improved post-divorce. Chrissy said when the threesome got proposed, she really tried to stay strong and not get drawn in. But as the weeks went on, she found herself just thinking about that. She told me she caved because the spontaneous one had been really good and honestly thought she could get away with it. At that point, she asked how I figured it out, and I said I didn't have to answer that. I asked her if there was anything else, and she said no. She just wanted a chance to earn trust, forgiveness, and to reconcile. I told her I didn't believe that. I mean, come on, 16 years totally faithful, then total porn star with my two best friends for a whole week. She swore, offered her phone, laptop, old phones, old email accounts. I said, no, I don't need all that, because it doesn't matter. You've done enough that I know about already. I am hurt, betrayed, and can't stand to look at you. I am done, and I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. When I woke that Monday morning, Chrissy was still home. She usually was on her way to the office, but had taken the day off, anticipating I had done the same thing. Once Cora was off to school, she began her love bombing. I told her I didn't care. I'd already seen all this before. She said she had a proposal for me. All access to her, all of her stuff, all the time, marriage counseling. She would go to individual counseling, cut off Emily, Mike, anyone I wanted permanently, and she would be an open book at all times for any questions. I said those are just things you do when you are trying to reconcile. I don't want to be a warden at home, and I don't want to reconcile. She begged and pleaded, and asked that I just wait a week, just a week, and if next Monday I still felt the same, she would sign no matter what, no contest. I looked at her and said, "You swear to that? If I wait a week, we will have totally uncontested divorce, no dragging it out at all?" She swore. I agreed to the 1-week trial. Seemed worth the risk. If she just signed and agreed, that would save us both time and money. If she was lying and still fought the divorce, well, it was just one awkward, terrible week I was losing. She continued to love bomb and consistently tried initiating sex. I rejected these usual efforts, and on Thursday night told her I was not moved in any way and still planned to file on Monday. She broke down and ran into the guest room until the next morning. Friday after work, I could tell she had something in mind. I really didn't care. I was literally counting the hours until I could be rid of her at this point. The love bombing was not working, and I was actually getting annoyed with her overzealous efforts. She said she thought we couldn't go on because of the imbalance that her infidelity had caused. I wasn't sure at first if she was implying what I thought she was implying, but she was. Chrissy said we should have a threesome. I said you did more than that. She said okay, and you can have a week off marriage too. I pointed out that was worthless. I just heard all about Eric's disastrous open marriage. I'm a guy, and unless you're a rich guy or a famous guy, you're not picking up women that easily, especially as a mid-30s already married man. There's no point in me sitting in bars for a week or on dating apps not getting matches. She said, okay, you can have 10 hall passes that never expire instead. That can be the same woman or 10 different. I replied, you think that's not going to impact our life? You're going to be okay with that? I doubt it. She said she won't let it suffer. She will make a huge effort to be available for all of my needs, and we can do anything I've ever wanted. I know that what I did next was sleazy, maybe not as bad as what she did. Still sleazy though, but at the time, I didn't really care. I made it clear that I wouldn't let these concessions just be a way to stall. If she wanted me to stay, then these things needed to happen sooner than later. I wanted the threesome to be her priority. I said she needed to have at least someone agreeing by February 1st or I was out. I don't know how she found her, but in the week between Christmas and New Year's, she showed me a picture of a woman from her spin class. She was gorgeous, and I couldn't believe she found someone that quick and someone so attractive. Tiffany was 24 years old. Her and Chrissy had been chatting at Spin for months, but nothing past regular small talk. I asked how, and Chrissy just said she had her ways. My assumption was she offered her money. About 2 weeks later was the big night. I made it a point to make sure Chrissy was fully involved and didn't feel left out. I mean, I still had my fun, but I knew this would make Chrissy think we were on the right track. I wasn't wrong. She told me how she only did this to try and win me back, but that the whole experience was actually amazing. Prior to that, I had been cashing in on her obligation of being overtly sexual with me. After the threesome, it stopped feeling like she was just meeting an obligation. She seemed excited to be with me and to try new things. Although, I think a part of it was her hope that I would abandon the hall passes. Mid-February, I took the first plunge into using the hall passes. There was a 27-year-old restaurant manager, Sabrina, close by my work. I had frequented it often and always thought she was a little flirty with me. I asked her out. I told her I was 2 months into my divorce proceedings, not true. I said we were still living in the same house, but that I had moved into the basement, also not true. Sabrina seemed hesitant but agreed to the date. Later on, I asked her what made her agree knowing my situation, and she said she noticed the first time I came in without my wedding ring, I took it off after I caught my wife. And since by the time I asked her my tan line was fading away, it meant I wasn't just taking it off to meet women, but not wearing it at all. During all of this, Chrissy had been pushing that we start marriage counseling. I stayed steadfast that I wasn't interested in doing that until I had used all my passes. By April, I had seen Sabrina 7 times. That really tore Chrissy up, and while today I regret doing this to her, at the time I felt justified. As I began to run out of my passes, I came to realize I was more and more interested in pursuing something official with Sabrina. I decided it was time to stop pretending to reconcile. I also think I had hurt Chrissy enough she was too. I still feel heavy guilt for this today. When I said it didn't work, and I still wanted to divorce, she didn't fight me. She was sad, she seemed defeated, but she didn't fight it. I found a small 2-bedroom house and left Chrissy in our family home. When I sat Cora down to tell her we were divorcing, I told her the appropriate amount of truth. I didn't put all the blame on her mother and owned up to my own behaviors during this. I focused on letting her know we both loved her and wanted the best, but we both wronged each other and had to separate. The 3 of us decided that 50-50 custody was best, so she alternated week to week staying at each other's place. It took until October for the divorce to go final. I dated Sabrina the entire time. Cora and her got along fine. I was happy Cora didn't see her as the other woman or anything. They never had a step-parent vibe or anything, but were friendly in the way a child is with their parents' friends. My relationship with Sabrina lasted about 2 years. It ended because I don't want to marry again or have more children. Chrissy had done some sporadic dating over the last couple years, one guy she was with for about 11 months. Then something weird happened this past spring. We have co-parented pretty effectively through all this. The one thing we both wanted was to be there for our daughter. We've been amicable through all of her events and for her sake. When her high school graduation hit, we ended up sitting by each other. What should have been awkward just wasn't. We started joking around, talking, got a little flirty. It was refreshing. A week later, I was still thinking of the fun I had at graduation. I decided to call Chrissy and ask her out. She said, absolutely not. This caused quite the swell of embarrassment. Luckily, that was only temporary. After a long pause, she continued, unless we start couples counseling. I agreed. We had our first session on a Thursday and our second first date on that Friday. It's been 6 months since that graduation. We are still doing counseling, dating, and have also started exploring the concept of alternative lifestyles. Gonna take that slow. Things are going well. Chrissy even brought up the idea of me moving back to our family home. Cora can't believe we are getting back together and says it's weird. She told me when she got back from her first semester at college last week that she wasn't sure if she was happy or concerned. She just knows for sure she doesn't want any details of any kind in regards to any of our exploits. Eric divorced Emily and ran for the hills. He put in a work transfer and now lives 4 states away. Mike and Emily tried to make a real relationship work for about a month after her divorce. Chrissy got back in contact with Emily after ours and learned that pretty much sex was the only thing they had in common, and it fizzled out pretty quick. Emily remarried a guy that used to work with Eric, and the company moved him when he was promoted to a regional manager spot. He is now Eric's direct boss, which I found hilarious. Little did the guy know, though, Eric and Emily started having an affair behind his back. I say did because someone tipped that guy off, probably out of spite, and now he's out for blood from both of them. Motherfucker Mike, as I referred to him, is still around and still single to this day. He got jumped one night after coming out of a local bar by some masked assailant. Rumor has it he was beaten up pretty good and may have gotten kicked in the balls 12 times. I don't know what the future holds from here, but today, I can't complain. I'll be sure to update the masses if it ever gets interesting again. Until then, thanks for reading.